Main content of the video. Postpartum depression doesn't begin with tears, but with paralysis. Introduction. The moment without tears. Not all mothers with postpartum depression cry. Some mothers don't shed a single tear, and that's precisely why no one realizes they're sinking deeper. They wake up every morning, hold their baby, feed them, change diapers, and put them to sleep. Everything goes so smoothly that outsiders see only a okay mother. No panic, no complaining, no asking for help, not even sad. But inside, a silent void is expanding. Not sad, so they don't cry. Not happy, but not in enough pain to cry out either. It's just a numb feeling, as if everything is happening through a thick pane of glass. The mother looks at her life, at her child, but doesn't truly touch anything. This moment is often misinterpreted. Family thinks, thank goodness she's strong. Society thinks, at least she's not crying. The mother herself tells herself, I must be okay. Just tired. But postpartum depression doesn't always begin with tears. Sometimes, it begins with a prolonged silence, where emotions are drained to the point where there's nothing left to shed. The mother doesn't feel she's suffering, but she also no longer feels alive. And because there are no big enough signs, no one stops to ask, are you really okay? If you're watching this video and recognize yourself in that silence, know this. Not crying doesn't mean you don't need help. Sometimes, the most dangerous moment is the moment when no tears are shed. What is paralysis, and why is it overlooked? The paralysis in postpartum depression isn't loud. It doesn't scream, it doesn't collapse everything immediately. It comes very subtly, like a switch being turned off little by little, until the mother is no longer sure what she's feeling. Emotional paralysis is a state of being unable to access one's true emotions. It's not that emotions are absent, but rather they are pushed away, blurred, as if the brain has drawn a thick curtain so the mother doesn't have to endure too much at once. Sadness, joy, anger, fear, all are flattened. What remains is a feeling of emptiness, fatigue, and detachment. The danger is, this state looks very much like, okay. The mother still wakes up on time, still takes care of the baby adequately, still replies to messages, still smiles when people ask how she is. There are no prolonged crying spells, no complaining, no clear signs that she needs help. Answer: the numbness is overlooked, both by those around her and by the mother experiencing it herself. Many mothers describe this feeling as living on autopilot. The body does everything it needs to do, but the mind stands outside observing. Some say, I know I'm holding my baby, but I don't feel like I'm there. Others feel like a shadow in their own home, present, but not touching life. The numbness is also often confused with ordinary fatigue. After childbirth, everyone is sleep deprived. Everyone is exhausted. So when a mother says she doesn't feel anything, the usual reaction is, go back to sleep and you'll be fine. But unlike fatigue, numbness doesn't disappear after a night's sleep. It lingers, silently, and gradually erodes her sense of self. Another reason why numbness goes unnoticed is that it doesn't fit the societal image of depression. Depression is imagined as tears, suffering, and despair. Numbness, on the other hand, appears calm, resilient, even strong. The mother doesn't cry, so she's praised for being strong. She doesn't cry for help, so she's considered okay. The mother herself is also prone to self-denial. When she's not visibly sad or in pain, she asks herself, am I exaggerating? Am I just ungrateful? Am I a cold mother? These questions make her even more silent, withdrawn, and continue to suffer in solitude. What's less often discussed is that numbness is a protective mechanism. When stress is prolonged, when responsibilities pile up, when there's a lack of sleep, support, and space to be herself, the brain chooses to reduce emotions so the mother can continue to exist. It's not because she's weak, but because she's been strong for too long. The problem is, when the numbness persists, the mother loses connection not only with negative emotions, but also with positive ones. The joy of seeing her child smile, the feeling of belonging to herself, the feeling of being a person, not just a role. Everything fades, becomes distant, as if life is happening somewhere else. And because the pain isn't enough to cry out, the numbness is ignored, until it becomes too deep. By the time the tears finally appear, the mother is already far from herself. If you're hearing these words and they sound familiar, remember, feeling nothing isn't a sign of stability. It's a silent signal that you've needed to be seen for a very long time. When a mother feels nothing, there's a moment hard to name, when a mother realizes she feels nothing, and that's more terrifying than sadness. Not sadness, not exactly pain, just emptiness. The mother still cares for her child, still completes all necessary tasks, but inside, all emotions seem to have been drained away. She doesn't feel joy when her child smiles, but neither does she feel annoyance. She doesn't feel overwhelming love, but neither does she feel hatred. Just a prolonged silence, a place where emotions cannot reach. Many mothers describe this feeling as watching their lives on a screen. Everything unfolds according to script, but they aren't truly present. When they hold their child, they know they're holding them. When they breastfeed, they know they're doing it right. But there's no connection, no emotional resonance. And that's what makes them silently terrified. Because they feel nothing, they begin to doubt themselves. Am I a bad mother? Do I lack maternal instincts? Why do others say they fell in love at first sight, but I don't? These questions remain unspoken. They are swallowed, because the mother fears that admitting them will lead to judgment of heartlessness, selfishness, or danger. So they remain silent, and that silence only deepens the inner void. What few people say is, not feeling connection doesn't mean not loving. In this state of numbness, the brain prioritizes survival, not emotion. The mother still protects her child, still does the best she can, but she doesn't feel love in the way society usually describes it. This doesn't define her worth. It only defines the level of exhaustion she's experiencing. The feeling of not feeling anything isn't directed solely at the child. It spreads to everything. The mother loses interest in things that once brought her joy. Music becomes dull. Conversations become tiresome. Time passes without leaving a mark. Some days go by, and they can't even remember what they felt that day. The most dangerous thing is when this emptiness begins to be seen as the new normal. The mother gets used to not feeling, used to living without herself. And because there's no clear crisis, no one intervenes. No one asks, no one stops. In many cases, this very numbness leads the mother to have terrifying thoughts, not because they want to disappear, but because they no longer feel they exist. The thought, what if I'm not here, appears as an empty, emotionless question. And that makes them even more afraid, because they don't understand what's happening to them. But the truth is, when a mother feels nothing at all, it's not a sign of numbness. That's a sign of a system that's been overloaded for a long time without rest, without support, without being listened to. Emotions don't disappear, they're just buried deep, and one day, if not safely reached, they'll either burst out, or collapse. If you're in this state, know this: you're not broken. You're not cold, and you're not wrong. You're just in a place where emotions can't reach you temporarily. And as long as you're here, listening, recognizing that emptiness, there's still a path to feeling again, little by little. The brain's defense mechanism, paralysis, is not weakness. When a mother loses all feeling, her first reaction is often self-blame. I must be weak. I must not be strong enough to be a mother. Something must be wrong with me. But the truth is the opposite. Paralysis is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of a system that has been strained for too long to survive. The human brain is designed to protect us from overload. When stress is short-lived, the body reacts with anxiety, tears, anger. But when stress is prolonged, day after day, night after night, the brain chooses a different strategy: emotional suppression. After childbirth, mothers often fall into a state of prolonged overload that is never properly defined. Chronic sleep deprivation, dramatic hormonal changes. The responsibility of caring for a life depends entirely on one's own well-being. The pressure to do well, to love the child correctly, to be happy. And, quite a bit, the loneliness, even when surrounded by others. In that situation, If the brain still allowed the mother to fully experience all emotions, the system would collapse. Therefore, the brain does what it does best: it shuts down. Not because the mother doesn't deserve to feel, but because it's the only way she can continue to wake up, continue to care for her child, continue to exist. This numbness, therefore, isn't emotionlessness. It's emotions suppressed to avoid excessive pain. Like a circuit breaker that cuts off power when there's an overload. Not to destroy the system, but to prevent it from burning out. The heartbreaking thing is, this protective mechanism is often misunderstood. When mothers don't cry, panic, or break down, they are labeled as strong, resilient, or good mothers. No one realizes that behind that calmness lies an exhausted nervous system. Mothers themselves easily fall for this misconception. They think that because they can still do everything, they don't have the right to be tired. Because they don't experience obvious pain, they don't have the right to be weak. And so they continue to push themselves, while their brains have long since switched to emergency mode. This paralysis is also why many mothers say they don't remember clearly the first few months after giving birth. Memory fades, time seems to pass like a continuous stream. This isn't because they're indifferent, but because the brain is prioritizing energy for the most vital functions and cutting out anything unnecessary for survival at that moment. More importantly, paralysis is not a permanent state. It's a temporary reaction, occurring when the body has no other choice. Once the mother truly gets rest, support, and is listened to without judgment, her emotions will gradually return. Not all at once, but little by little. But for that to happen, a crucial shift is needed. Stop viewing numbness as a personal failure, and start seeing it as a biological signal. If you're numb, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've endured too much for too long, and your body is trying to keep you alive in the best way it knows how. Understanding this won't make everything disappear instantly, but it can lift the heavy burden of guilt that many mothers carry. And sometimes, just a little less self-blame gives the nervous system more space to breathe, and to feel again. Phrases that make postpartum paralysis more dangerous. Postpartum paralysis rarely becomes dangerous in itself. What makes it deep, prolonged, and turn into severe depression is often seemingly harmless statements. They don't make the mother cry. They make her even more silent. At least you can still take care of the baby. This statement sounds comforting, but it unintentionally denies the mother's entire inner world. It implicitly asserts that fulfilling her role is enough. Emotions don't matter. The mother hears this and learns to tell herself, I don't have the right to be tired, because I can still do it. And so all signals for help are suppressed even more. It's good that you're not sad, isn't it? Society is accustomed to viewing sadness as a problem, so when a mother says she's not sad, everyone breathes a sigh of relief. But they don't realize that not being sad doesn't mean being okay. When emotions are completely flattened, the mother loses the ability to recognize what she truly needs. This statement slams the door shut on dialogue, because the mother no longer has a legitimate reason to be cared for. Every mother goes through this. This is one of the most dangerous statements. It makes personal pain seem obvious, and therefore, unnecessary to address. The mother hears this and learns to compare. If everyone else can handle it, why does she feel so empty? Instead of receiving support, she condemns herself as inadequate. You have to be strong for your child. This statement places a moral burden on the mother. It implies that if she admits she's not okay, she's harming her child. The result is that the mother tries even harder, while her nervous system is already exhausted. The paralysis is no longer a protection, but a prison. You must be overthinking things. This statement makes the mother doubt her own experience. When emotions have faded, being told she overthinks further isolates her. She learns not to trust her feelings, and that is dangerous, because identifying emotions is fundamental to seeking help. Having a healthy child should bring happiness. This statement creates a deep internal conflict. The mother knows she should be grateful, she should be happy. But in reality, she feels nothing. The gap between should and is makes her feel ashamed, guilty, and chooses silence. The paralysis is thus enveloped in a thick layer of guilt. These statements have one thing in common. They don't ask, they conclude. And when the mother is judged for her own sake, she has nowhere left to speak. The danger is that the more she is denied, the more the paralysis becomes her only way of living. The mother stops trying to feel, stops hoping to be understood, stops thinking she deserves help. And from a temporary defense mechanism, the paralysis turns into a prolonged state, where emotions are frozen, and loneliness becomes absolute. What the mother needs is not advice, not comparison, but a very simple question, very rarely asked. How are you feeling, really? Just that question, asked at the right time, without judgment, without pressure, the paralysis has a chance to crack open a small fissure. And through that small fissure, emotions can begin to return. When the tears come late, and are already too deep, there comes a point, after a long time of feeling nothing at all, the tears finally appear. But it's not relief, not release. It's a sign that the numbness is no longer strong enough to keep things still. Many mothers don't cry in the first few weeks after giving birth. They don't cry when they're exhausted. They don't cry when they're lonely. They don't cry when they feel lost. They live in a state of emptiness, silence, as if they've become accustomed to not feeling. And then one day, very unexpectedly, everything breaks. It could be something very small, a careless remark, a long sleepless night, a moment alone in the bathroom for too long. The tears come, without warning. But when they come, they carry with them everything that has been suppressed for months, even years. At this point, the mother is no longer just sad. She is overwhelmed. Unlike the initial tears, when emotions are new and can still be named, late tears are often accompanied by a feeling of losing control. The mother cries without knowing why. She cries because too many things are piling up. She cries because she realizes she has strayed too far from herself without realizing it. The heartbreaking thing is, when tears come late, the loneliness is often already very deep. The mother has become accustomed to not speaking out, accustomed to being misunderstood and being okay, accustomed to bearing the burden alone. And when emotions finally erupt, they don't know who to turn to, where to begin, and sometimes, they no longer have the energy to ask for help. Many mothers say this stage is more terrifying than paralysis, because at least when paralyzed, they can still stand firm. But when emotions break down, they feel like they are falling freely. It is at this stage that very heavy thoughts can arise, not because they want to disappear, but because the pain has finally taken shape. Emotions return, but intensely, unguided, unsupported. And the mother is terrified of her own inner world. The danger is, those around her often only start to worry when they see tears. But by then, the mother has endured for too long. She has become too good at being silent. And she is so tired that explaining her emotions becomes a burden. Tears arriving late doesn't mean the mother is weakened. On the contrary, it shows that the protective mechanisms have run out of energy. The brain can no longer keep suppressing emotions. And everything comes flooding back at once. If not properly understood, this stage is easily labeled as a crisis, breakdown, or out of control. But in reality, it is the consequence of a process that has been neglected for too long. If the numbness had been seen earlier, if the subtle signals had been heard in time, the tears might have come more gently, and more safely. It's important to say this. When tears come late, the mother doesn't need correction, doesn't need to be pressured to get it over with quickly. They need to be kept safe, to be in a space where emotions aren't judged, aren't diminished, aren't compared. And if you're at this stage, crying more, hurting more, afraid of your own emotions, please remember, this doesn't mean it's too late for help. It just means you've carried too much alone for a very long time. Tears coming late isn't the end. It can be the first sign that emotions are beginning to find their way back, and this time, they need to be received, not pushed away again. Call it by its very name. You're not okay, as people think. There's something very difficult to say, especially for mothers who are used to enduring. You're not okay, as people think, and that doesn't make you wrong. For a long time, you've done your job well. You take care of your children. You don't cause trouble. You don't complain. You don't break down in front of anyone. Answer. The world around you quickly comes to the conclusion, she's okay. But what does okay mean here? Is it still getting up every day? Is it still fulfilling your responsibilities? Is it not crying in front of others? If that's the definition of okay, then many mothers are being seen as okay, while inside they've long since run out of steam. Calling it by its true name is difficult, because it goes against what you've been trying to maintain. When you say, I'm not okay, you're not just admitting your feelings, you're shattering the strong image people are used to seeing. And that's scary. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being judged, fear of being seen as weak, ungrateful, or unworthy of being a mother. But the truth is, not calling yourself by your true name is what keeps you trapped. When you're not okay, but still have to pretend to be, your body continues to use even more extreme mechanisms to survive. The paralysis lasts longer, emotions are pushed further away, and the distance between you and yourself grows. Not because you're not trying, but because you're trying in the wrong place, trying to be silent instead of being seen. Calling yourself by your true name doesn't mean you have to tell everything. It doesn't require a full explanation. Sometimes, it's just about allowing yourself to think honestly, I'm not okay, even though I'm doing everything else. That statement doesn't weaken you. It makes you more real. Many mothers wait until they're bad enough to admit it. Wait until they can't sleep. Wait until they cry constantly. Wait until their emotions become overwhelming. But the truth is, you don't need to hit rock bottom to get help. The fact that you're empty, distant, and don't feel like you exist, that's enough. Calling yourself by your name also means distinguishing between the outside world and the inside experience. Others see you as okay because they only see your behavior, but only you know what it feels like to live in your body every day. And that experience is valuable, even if no one else sees it. Maybe you're not ready to tell someone yet. That's okay. Calling yourself by your name isn't a big declaration. It can start small. Write a sentence in your journal. Acknowledge yourself in silence. Listen to a video like this and think, yes, I'm here. Those small steps create a gap. And through that gap, support can begin to come in, little by little, without rushing, without forcing. The most important thing to say here is, you don't owe anyone a okay image of yourself. You don't need to prove that you're resilient. You don't need to wait until you're broken to get attention. If today you have the courage to think, maybe I'm not as okay as everyone thinks, that's not a failure. It's a very early, and very precious, sign of returning to yourself. Conclusion. When the paralysis begins to shed, the paralysis doesn't disappear in an instant. It melts very slowly, like ice in the weak morning sun, quiet, undramatic, sometimes barely noticeable. The first moment isn't happiness. It's not overwhelming love for your child. Nor is it the feeling of, I'm okay now. The first moment is often very small. It's when you feel tired, and know you're tired. It's when a tear falls and you don't rush to wipe it away. It's when you realize you're breathing heavily, and allow yourself to pause for a moment. That's when the paralysis begins to melt. Many mothers fear this stage, because they think, if I start feeling again, I might collapse. And that fear is very real. But the important thing to say is, emotions don't come back to destroy you. They come back because, finally, your body feels safe enough not to need to shut them off anymore. Recovery doesn't follow a straight line. There are days you feel a little lighter, then the next day you're just as empty. There are moments you tap into your emotions, then shut yourself off again because you're too tired. That doesn't mean you're regressing. It just means your nervous system is relearning how to feel, very cautiously. As the numbness wears off, you may begin to feel things you never allowed yourself to feel. Sadness for being alone for so long, anger for not being supported, self-pity for those silent months. These emotions don't make you a bad mother. They make you human again. The most important thing during this phase isn't to fix yourself. It's not to go back to denying yourself. Don't tell yourself, okay, stop thinking about it. Don't force yourself to be strong immediately. Don't rush to label yourself, okay, just because you've gotten over the crying. Numbness melts best when it meets gentleness, not pressure. When you're in spaces that don't demand a full explanation. When you're allowed to say, "I'm not okay," without having to give a convincing reason. And if today, all you can do is realize, I've been numb for a long time, that's already a step forward. You don't need to go fast. You don't need to go exactly like everyone else. You just need to stop turning your back on your experience. Postpartum depression doesn't begin with tears. And recovery doesn't begin with happiness. It begins with allowing yourself to feel again, little by little, at your own pace. If you are here, listening, recognizing yourself in these words, remember, you don't have to live two lives anymore. One, okay, for others to see, and one silent life for yourself. You deserve to live fully in your own emotions. And that path, however slow, has already begun.